And here we are back for the second part of the Advanced Tobruk System replay or playthrough of Triple Play from the Critical Hit Annual number 2. Welcome back to the Grognards Corner, everybody, and I'm trying a little new video setup right now. I don't know how it's going to work, but we're going to go with this for now and see how everything works. Did my setup with the Israelis and the Arab forces, and part of me was really debating with a lot of the Israeli forces, since the Arabs were going to be coming across open terrain. I was really thinking of setting up, Israeli forces to take advantage of the walls here and up and around over here as well. I kind of already had some in this area right here. It would have allowed me to get a lot of opportunity fire off and just fire off on them as they were coming in. Conversely, though, it would have also opened up myself to receiving a lot of incoming fire from the Arab forces. And the walls are nice, but they're not that great. And looking over things, probably would have been severely outnumbered. The Israelis are outnumbered in this scenario to begin with. Putting a few squads behind the walls probably wouldn't have helped any. They'd have probably just gotten shot up, and the Arabs would have probably been able to advance a little bit better. I should have probably capitalized on this building right here that was behind the wall, but hey, I tend to lose most of my games in the setup anyways. So the first turn pretty much progressed the way I kind of had figured. The Arab forces moved on from this side, and you can see them right around here, and got behind the wall, and I was forced to move some of the Israeli forces up into these buildings here to try to keep them from occupying. Way up here in this corner, if you can notice, all the Arab forces have orange winded markers on them, basically to get across the wide open terrain. I went ahead and double timed the units, basically marking them as winded, and it's not that bad of an effect. They take a 1 column shift to the left whenever they shoot, and they can't double time again. The only time you can get rid of a winded marker is if you spend an entire turn without moving or shooting. And the way that the Advanced Tobruk system marks whenever you move or shoot, it's real easy to remember if a unit shot or moved or did anything throughout the entire game, because the markers are right there for the movement and for fire. In fact, let's go ahead and take a look. And this is, you have a unit that moves, you mark it with the move marker. And if a unit fires, you mark it with a fire marker. Real easy to tell. And also, where you place the movement marker also determines what type of movement you did. If you did basically a low crawl, which is basically just moving 1 hex, you put the movement marker on top of the counter. If you assault moved or double timed, you put it behind the counter. That's not only is that to mark, to remind you that the unit moved, but it also in the rest of the turn, if someone shoots at you, there are bonuses and penalties depending on what the target's movement state is. So instead of trying to actually physically remember, all right, did this unit low crawl, did this unit assault, you just go off of where the marker placement is. If the marker is placed on top, all right, it was assault moving, there's no penalty for that. If the marker is behind the stack, then all right, they were assault moving, and I get a 1 column shift to the right benefit out of that. So it's a nice little way to do two things: to mark who moved, who fired, and what their movement cover state is. It's something that I've always found. The way the impulse system works, it's real handy, because since it's a WeGo impulse system, you really kind of need to remember who's done what during the turn. It's not like in most IGO-UGO systems where you do your entire turn, then the opponent does their entire turn. Since both players are phasing their impulses back and forth, it's a real good way to keep track of things. So anyway, sorry, I got a little distracted on that for a little bit. Pretty much the troops in the center here, I shifted them up forward a little bit. Really the biggest Israeli wins came when the Syrians, I believe these are the Syrians, these might be the Arab Liberation Army, started moving down off of the hill. These two stacks right here came into a line of sight from the Israeli Davidka mortar and the 3-inch French mortar, and luckily enough, I was able to roll real well. Rounds landed right on target. Managed to mess them up pretty bad. I think I killed out one squad flat out, and if we can see, wounded one of the Arab leaders, and one of the other Arab units has been reduced. It's taken a couple steps, so it's already at its reduced side. One thing I did forget to mention about the Davidka mortar, the lovely Israeli homemade Davidka mortar, is that since it has no base plate, it does not. Most ordnance, whenever it fires, you get and you actually hit something, you get pluses to your firing from there on out. Kind of like target acquisition and advanced squad leader. In Advanced Tobruk System, they call it burst on target. Since the Davidka mortar doesn't have a base plate, it's really hard to try to keep the mortar in the exact position to be able to utilize that. So the Davidka mortar, in addition to its morale effect that it has the first time it's fired, it also cannot acquire a target. So regardless if you hit a target, you do not get any benefits like most other ordnance does later in the turn. So interesting little rule for that one. The French mortar did go ahead, managed to get a hit, so it got a little acquisition marker, and it managed to break and do some casualties to this other squad over here. Beginning of the turn, I already went ahead for turn 2. I already went ahead and rolled initiative. First thing you do is artillery, offboard artillery, and the Arab Liberation Army had this little mortar guy, this observer that I kind of pointed out last turn or last video. 75 millimeter offboard artillery. It had low ammunition. I stated in the last video, I wasn't quite sure what it was. Went back through the rules, checked it. It's a -1 on the dice roll for radio contact. So basically, anytime you want to fire artillery, you have to designate what your target is, as long as it's within line of sight. Then you have to try to get a battery access. Basically rolling a 10-sided dice, and depending on who you are, what your training level is, depending on what your contact is. So I was looking through the rules to try to find out what exactly the Arabs were. They use irregulars. Since they're irregulars, they fall under the irregular artillery contact, which is a 2. So you need to roll a 2 or less on a 10-sided dice. Low ammo is a -1 to that dice roll, so they only get a battery contact on a 1 in 10 chance. Fortunately, the Arabs actually did manage to get radio contact, and because I did roll a 1, probably the only one I'll ever see. So basically what they did is they went ahead and they can nominate any hex or any target within their line of sight, and I went ahead and decided to lay this. It was it right there? I think. Oh no, they were going after this mortar. So it basically made that the target location. They wanted to try to take out that mortar. Then what you do after that is you roll a percentile dice to figure out what the drift is. If you actually land on target, or if it scatters. Now let me go ahead and see if I can find the chart real quick. I know I got it around here somewhere. Basically, you have this artillery diagram, and you basically roll percentile dice, and if you get a 0 to 16, it'll land on target. There are, of course, modifiers over here: registration hex, move existing, you got your battery contact and all that other stuff. But depending on what you roll for the percentile, you'll either land right on target, or it'll show you which hex that it scatters to. Well, looking at and I rolled like a 91 or something silly like that. So it ended the initial spotting rounds, or call for fire as they're called in ATS, landed way over here. Now, normally in the full rules is that if the call for fire marker lands on or adjacent to an enemy unit, you go ahead and do all guns repeat. If you don't, then the call for fire marker remains on the board, and then next turn, if you're able to get battery contact again, then you can shift it, and that really increases your chances of bringing the artillery on target. So it's great that the Arabs were able to get their artillery on board. Not so great that it drifted off and wasn't able to hit anything. The bad thing is, I don't know if they're going to be able to maintain radio contact, because again, it's a 1 in 10 chance. So not sure if they're going to be able to land the artillery on target next turn. So that is what we're looking at going into the beginning of turn 2. And I'm just noticing my low battery light is flashing on me. So I wanted to go a little bit longer, but I think this is a good point. Beginning of turn 2, I went ahead and rolled initiative. The Israelis won initiative. Basically, each side rolls a d10. Whoever rolls lowest gets to choose if they want to act first or if they want to act second. Israelis won initiative, and I believe they are going to be acting first. And we will actually get into the meat and potatoes of a turn when we come back in part 3.